Hello and welcome to the Tech Lunch Podcast, where we encourage our listeners to learn something new about tech every week. This can range from learning about new and exciting applications to the advancements in coding and technology. If you are always learning, you will always be a step above the rest. Take the time during lunch or during a break to listen and learn, kind of like a lunch and learn, but for the ears. This podcast will open the listener's ears to new and exciting technologies they may have not been privy to in the past. These topics will range from manufacturing technologies to data collection technologies and everything in between. Hello, I'm Nick.
Hey, I'm John.
Hello, I'm Ed.
And this week we're going to continue down the 3D printing rabbit hole. You might be able to hear one in the background, but who knows? This week we're going to talk about, the 3D printing, barriers to entry, which is cost. We're talking, and then this is going to be a lot of ballpark figures, stuff that we, from own personal experience and stuff like that we've had. So, don't take the cost that we're saying, to heart. Use it as a ballpark measurement, somewhere to do your budgeting and stuff like that. And for the love of God, if you go and buy or anything right, please, if you're going to buy a 3D printer or something like that, please use disposable income. Don't go out and buy a 3D printer because you think you want one, you can't pay your rent. All right, or you can't make a bill payment. Don't do that. Save up money, then go buy it. And you can use that money. You can use that 3D printer to recoup the money that you've already paid for it. It happens. Mm-hmm. So when we're getting into the cost of printers, John, what are you thinking?
So when I'm looking at the cost of my printer, we can start off with, basics. Like, what do I need to start a print? Of course, you need a printer, you need a source of power, you need some filament, and yeah, I think you're rocking and rolling. Well, of course, you need a computer to slice your files, so you need your data. But all things considered, if I ran that ballpark, for me to get to that point, it was like $260, and I was up and running. Now that was with a Ender 3 Pro, and it was, let's say, not the smoothest sailing, but when I hit print, something was printing. So it's a good start, and that's kind of like most people's entry level is I got the printer, I want the printer. How much is that going to cost me to get this? Most people have in their mind maybe 1, 2, 3 specific use cases for, like, hey, I need a knob for my cabinet door. Mm-hmm. It broke. They don't make this knob anymore. Or hey, I need a model for this specific clip that broke off of like a baby gate. My brother he's probably reprinted that baby gate clip like 5, 6, 7, 8 times. But that saves him from needing to go to the store to buy it.
Right.
Buy that same thing 7, 8 times.
Utility.
Yeah. So and for all things considered, those utility prints are what a lot of people are thinking about when they're thinking 3D printing. But you can also take on the we talked about STEAM and the artistic and the like wall art side. Yep. So what's the cost of that too? Because there's a lot of people that when they're thinking 3D printing, they're like, "Ooh, I can print this model of this character I like," or something like that. So those costs relatively low, but then when you get into, I think it expands, and I can kind of pass this over to what you're thinking about it. But it expands with the level of detail, mm-hmm. with the kind of the project you're working on, because in a lot of cases we're thinking of making a certain model, and that is the project, not necessarily I've got this hose I need to get to flow a certain way to irrigate my garden, and I need to print this, which is a fantastic example, a Tesla valve or something like that, mm-hmm. to get it to flow correctly without me sitting there and watering my garden all the time. So in those cases, 3D printing is just a piece in that process and not the overall goal. But I think a lot of people start as that the model is the goal. And if you're talking barriers to entry there, not even $300. Probably if you would have got a deal on it, less than $250.
Yeah.
So, but Ed, when you're thinking about cost, now I know recently you've gotten an Ender. I don't know how far you've kind of messed with it so far. But you're a fantastic example of a barrier to entry because you just broke that and
Right.
now you're here. So what are some things? I guess some forethoughts or some hurdles that you're thinking that you would need to hop to get to something.
I would say the biggest hurdle I see is that one, you'd have to get used to like the parameters of the printer. You'd also have to get used to the software. You know, what's the ins and out of the software, what kind of problems you run to the software, how you can do hacks and things like that. So some of that's already been figured out by people. Right. Some of it, it depends on if you want to say, hey, I want to figure out everything myself and rehash what everybody else did. So I would say that's one of the biggest barriers is where to start and how you start. So, do I want to start where I just take it out the box, put it together, plug it up, make sure the bed's level, print something.
Yeah. So
and then it's like, well, what's wrong? It's not working.
Yeah. And the thing is, on the topic of cost, when it comes down to software, for a 3D printer, is really simple. It's free.
Oh yeah.
95% of your slicers are free, and if you buy an Ender, software comes with it. Please don't use that. Go download Prusa Slicer, Cura, one of those. Something other than the Creality Slicer. It's based off an older version of Cura and really does not work all that well. Also, your newer Marlin 2 machines, like what I have, it doesn't like it.
Yeah, you lose functionality.
Yeah, it doesn't play well with others. So if you're talking about your cost when it comes down to software fees, it's free. It's open source, 100% open source. Your laptop, on the other hand, you might be able to get through with that. If it's like an online slicer, you can get away with having less RAM on board your machine. However, if you're going to be going and doing onboard slicing and stuff like that, and you're not running off the GPU or something like that, you need to have a computer that's going to withstand it. At least 8 to 16 gigs of RAM on board.
Or time to wait.
Yeah, or time to wait.
For it to process.
At least an i5.
Yeah.
If you're doing the Intel world, a good AMD if you're going the AMD world. There is no wrong answer with that. However, cost does dictate. If you can only afford, an i5 machine or one of the new, what is it, Pentium machines that they just came back out with, the new lower end Intel processor PCs.
I remember Celeron.
Yeah, but the thing is even the newer PCs that they're coming out with have 8 gigs of RAM on board. Yeah. They've gone away from the 4 gigs. And gone to 8 standard, which is good because you can slice with 8 gigs. Yeah. You'll have no issue with it. Just don't have any other programs running.
Hell, you showed me the other day actually. Like, I mean, if you've got a Raspberry Pi with 4 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs of RAM, we can actually load a Linux distro that like a desktop GUI interface that'll let you get to Blender. It'll get you to Prusa Slicer. I think I downloaded. What was it? Fedora, and they've got Prusa Slicer.
Yep.
So it's ready right there too. So if you've got Linux, it'll work. If you got Apple, it'll work. Mac
so what that means is if you have an old machine, you can load that damn thing from anywhere.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing. It's it's just that now you start talking about price of machines. Ed, what was yours?
Everything $220.
Yeah. Now me out the door.
What was your whole package? Like you got
$220.
You know what I'm saying? So you got the Ender 3
the Ender 3 Pro,
and then
it came. I think it came with some nozzles. It came with they give you a little spool of filament. But I'd already bought some filament beforehand for $15 for the other project where we was doing the $300 challenge. So I still have that project, but. Yeah, it was like $220.
That's after tax too.
That's the taxes included.
Okay. Yeah. And
then mine, out the door, Ender 5 Pro, with 2 spools of filament and some nozzles was right at $400 out the door, which For me, I was able to get a Ender 5 Pro sub 300, or right at about $300.
Big drop for it, to be honest.
So those they usually go for about 350. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
And 2 rolls of PETG for $33.29.
That was a great deal.
So and it lays out pretty nice. Does pretty well laying out. So I'm not too upset with that. But the problem is it's that's just the first step. The first hurdle is buying the machine and and playing with it that way.
Yeah.
I think when you start getting into the the tools you need to maintain it, now you got to take into account the cost of your alcohol. Not what you're drinking, but what you're using on the machine. Your rags.
Yeah.
Your wrenches. If you get one of the torque wrenches from All 3D to do nozzle changes, you can get those. They're like $24.
Yeah, and they make it so easy.
And it makes sure everything's torqued to spec. There's no issue with it. You're not having to hand tighten it. And then once you start getting into the fun expansions for it and stuff like that, upgrades and whatnot, then your price kind of
it depends.
Triples.
Depends on what you're trying to upgrade. Because we've talked about Ed and Nick's. So I'll take my Ender 3 and kind of compare it against. So just to give you guys a bit of a idea, I've had the Ender 3 for just under a year. No, it's over a year. So it's just under 2 years. So I've had it for quite some time, and it's been pumping out prints pretty nonstop. I've done quite a few upgrades. So like the CR or the auto bed leveling. There's many different flavors of that you could get. You could get the BL Touch, CR Touch. You can get an Easy ABL, which is just a magnetic sensor. Which honestly, if you ask Ed, he's probably asking you why you haven't gone there already. Why you're still using a mechanical probe. But those pieces can range anywhere from what you got yours for $35.
Yeah, $35.
All the way up to like $60, $70, because for the Easy ABL, they have their own circuit control board they need you to use with it, and that gets you into the $80 range.
Right, not including the fact that like with mine, if I was to go to the Easy ABL, one, I have to change my firmware out. Yep. I have to change my motherboard out possibly, and I have to go to a solid mount bed.
Yeah.
So your upgrade now tripled.
See, that's where we differ a little bit. For me, I mean, as far as the cost depends on your level of experience with electronics.
Right.
You're paying for what you don't know in electronics. Everything I've seen from the motherboards are simple. I've seen no motherboard that I've seen from a 3D printer that's complicated. It's basically the same type of footprint for all of them. Maybe they use different FETs or they use different drivers for the stepper motors, but for the most part, they're all the same. So what most people are paying for is, hey, this works. I want what works. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a little bit different because I'm a electronic hobbyist and I've been doing electronics for a long time. So my goal is to make my own things. So I can order 20 boards from somewhere. Basically, you can get PCB Eagle or any basic software and go online and draw out your patterns that you want, and they'll make sure it's right, even if it's a multi-layer board. And you can have those printed off pretty affordably.
Yeah, and that sensor's not expensive now too. So
then if you good with soldering like I am, then you can do a lot of that stuff. If you have the equipment, I already have the equipment to do surface mount soldering and those things. So my goal is to build my own board. That's my goal. My goal is to make my own board so that I can make the board do what I want to do. So if I want to run 20 stepper motors, I can run 20 stepper motors. If I want to run 10 servos, I can run 10 servos. I'm not limited to what Creality says or Prusa.
So that it makes sense that I like that's where your mind goes, because everything is for right now kind of cookie cutter, and like you can take a look at what's supposed to be top of the line Prusa.
Yeah.
It's a clone of the Ender. They just said, I think we could do it better. Or I can kind of smooth these things out, and it's quality. It has some of these things these upgrades that I was speaking about already, like in there.
Mm-hmm.
So your dual Z's, your bed leveling sensor instead of a probe, the ability to change
the linear rail X and Y's.
Linear rail, and then its belt system is fundamentally different, but it's very similar. I mean, in a lot of these cases, I kind of get back to maybe the cost thing. So in a lot of these cases, cost is relative to what your problem is. Of course, you could, ideally, you could hit print off the first one, and it's going to be the best print, period, and continue to stay that. But that's not life. The first
definitely not with mine. I'll tell you that.
So it's just science. Like as you heat the bed,
I got bum rushed the first one I did.
Yeah, exactly. As you heat the bed, and you look at how your bed has got like scratches and the scratches and the gouges are gonna come with the printing. It comes with bed leveling. You never know. But all these things like if I were to ballpark even the cost that I've put in, I've upgraded my motherboard. I've upgraded my extruder from a plastic to metal. I've upgraded to a dual Z. I've upgraded to the auto bed leveler, and then I've even added a Raspberry Pi with an Octopi or with a Pi Cam just to look at that. All of that considered, I'm at $700-800, and now I'm getting close to fully autonomous. But you take it and look at that, and you look at even Ender 3 S1, which is almost, not every, but almost all of those upgrades I mentioned. It comes with the CR Touch. It comes with actually dual gear, direct drive, extrusion. It handles those upgrades. Yeah, must be nice. Nick's going to get that soon.
Got to.
But it comes with those things, and the package, what was it? It was Amazon, I think it was $400 to $450. So right around what you got for the Ender 3, the Ender 5 Pro, they also have an Ender 3 where they were like, you know what? We'll do the upgrades for you and make that barrier to entry less complex or less difficult.
Yeah.
But then again, there's those people like me who are like, I don't want to just throw the money at it. I need this $60 to be worth $60 of my time.
Like I don't mind tinkering. And the thing is you really get kind of familiar with the community.
Yeah.
The 3D printing community and stuff like that, when you're fighting the issues from the ground up and not just ripping the thing to pieces and saying, hey, I'm going to buy every single upgrade under the sun. Mm-hmm. It's like for me, I do have some things planned for the Ender, mainly, direct drive. So going direct,
dual gear.
Yeah.
Dual gear.
I'm doing dual gear extrusion eventually, linear rail, and then doing dual Z, so it'll actually cradle the bed, with that everything's gonna take time. We'll probably hit the linear rail and a good version of the direct extrusion. We found a kit $34 today.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap. Pretty good deal.
And they also have kits that you utilize your same original hot end that you got now that came on the machine. It just kind of relocates things. Mm-hmm. So all it does is take your existing components and relocates it. All it does is a bracket. Yeah. So you have that, and it gets rid of a lot of the bowden tube, so it saves you money on the bowden tube aspect. But then you got the linear rails, which surprisingly I found the other day that all my linear rails combined will only cost me $50 for linear rails, and that's it. That includes carriages.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And you just kind of 3D print some other parts, drill some holes, punch some screws, and you're done.
Be careful with the linear rails, because some of the ones that come out of China, you have to make sure that when they're going, there is a lot of deflection in them. So it depends on what accuracy you're looking for.
Yeah, All 3D did a really good job of explaining exactly what you need to get for the Ender 5, and also they give you the links to where to go find them. And so it's great because the community is behind these things. They show you where you to spend the best money.
Right.
And the thing is most of your parts for like the machines, you can 3D print those things. And it's $15 for a roll of PLA if you're going with that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you really want to go 2 rolls of, PET G, you're looking $30 to $35, if not a little bit more. However, if you think about it, the amount of prints that you can get, off of those pieces, you're saving money there.
Yeah, you save a lot of money with that. Like there's a few different schools of thought. Sunlu did a master spool where they were trying to save on the plastic spool, and they would use Velcro to kind of strap their rolls together, and you would be able to kind of unload the spool, pretty much open it up, separate the sides, load the spool on there, take the Velcro off, and pop it back into place. You get a new spool, and with that they were cutting the cost down into the trying to get past lower to the 30 to the 20.
I think I've seen this.
I mean, I haven't. I got some good prints. I didn't get a lot of prints. I found that if you're not careful, you won't notice that it didn't lock into place, and as it's printing, it's gonna pull apart, and then possibly, you possibly got a spaghetti monster before the extruder. That's even worse. You're probably not going to get anything to go through the extruder.
Now you're wheeling everything together.
Yeah, exactly.
In my opinion, we was talking barriers. One of the biggest barriers is that not everything done on these printers is scientific. Is art.
Yeah.
Or people just keep trying stuff to something work. to me, the material you use is like paint.
Yeah.
You can buy cheap paint or you can buy the best paint that you can get.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say it makes no sense to cut costs on material.
Mm-hmm.
You should get whatever range material you can afford.
Yeah.
Whether it's medium quality, best quality, or. Right. But I would get nothing below medium quality because it makes no sense because you're not going to get a good print.
Yeah, and the thing is I'll say this: I kind of did things backwards. I started with PET G. I started one of the more harder ones and just went on from there. Because I knew that I wanted the durability. If I'm going to print something, I want the durability. I want the damn thing to last.
Yeah.
So, that's what it is. So I'll probably end up sticking with PET G, for now. For most things until, I try this TPU that's sitting next to me and we see how that goes.
I'm actually excited for that because I kind of dropped that off as a joke because I was like, well, you're taking a step there. Let's see. This is the humble Nick.
Oh, believe me, I'm humble.
Like,
believe me, let me tell you.
Got the PET G working, but the TPU is gonna slap you in the face. I tell you that much. Because you think about it, how your extruder fundamentally works is it's gripping with teeth on that gear, and if you have a dual gear from both sides, but I think yours is single. So yours is like mine. It's only gripping that from one side. How do I push a plastic that is rubbery through a 1.75 millimeter hole on that Bowden tube, like smoothly? And this is why also the Capricorn tube, or what the Capricorn tube represents, the precision that it was machined with or made with. This is why that's so much more important. Is like when you're pulling that TPU, if there's any spot that bends and bunches, then you will have a fail, and it may not look like anything on the outside. But in that Bowden tube, you're not getting anything.
Yeah, because I have Capricorn tubing on mine.
Yeah.
So that might wait until we do direct drive, and we'll go from there. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, TPU is fun. TPU is what the whole idea was. Dampening and vibration resistance and coasters, friction. Like for the bottom of my enclosure, I could print these little squares to stop it from sliding around. Like little things like that. Perfect. But yeah, so we kind of get a little bit off topic. I'll talk about filaments and stuff. We might do a different one for that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a different one.
A different one, filament testing maybe. But we could go into the cost of that and the cost of other filaments. Oh, actually, let's go into the cost of.
Yeah, we can go into the cost of filaments.
The filament. We can even do materials like.
Yeah.
Like what are your
consumables.
Daily consumables, or not even daily. Let's say weekly, monthly consumables. What is wearing down and getting used the most needs to be replaced the most. So these things are actually, your nozzles are relatively cheap unless you want like diamond tip, something like that. You get you in the $100 range, but you get some brass tip nozzles, hardened steel. stainless steel. I think there's even tungsten you could probably
Tungsten
get for
and tungsten carbide.
those are a little bit more expensive, but still not like $100 for one nozzle expensive. But those things like your nozzle, I think I've switched my nozzle out the most, even though this current one probably is due for a swap. The brass nozzles, I've noticed if anybody makes the mistake of using a pliers or a metal tool on them, you're going to ruin your brass nozzle almost immediately. So if you get your print that's like kind of leaking out and like curling back and getting stuck on your nozzle, and you try to clear it off with the snippers or like the anything metal at all, you're gonna ruin the diameter, which should be standard 0.4 of that nozzle. When you get into hardened and stainless and things, it's a little bit less of a worry.
More forgiving.
But when you get more abrasive filaments, you need to replace them more. So that right there, though, Nick, you just bought some to put on mine. Yours, I got some to put on mine. I spent not even $10.
Yeah, $10 for about.
Yeah, I got the same thing when I bought the other hot end.
Yeah.
A lot of them come with extras too.
Yeah, they all come with them. It's like maybe $10-15 for 45 of them.
Yeah, you should have extra, like maybe half dozen to a dozen nozzles on hand just at any given point. I'm not saying you're going to go through 5 in one day or 6 in one day, but if you have that many on hand, you're not going to need to buy another nozzle unless you're switching maybe temperatures or filaments, because for brass, there's limitations of the temperature you want to melt at. You want hardened steel to go higher than 260. Some machines limit you at 260 Celsius, guys.
Yeah.
So some of them limit you at 260 Celsius, period. But when you get the thermocouple we talked about, we can kind of push past that. But then is your nozzle going to be able to withstand it is the real question. Okay. And then we talk about print bed. So Nick, you can probably explain about how the print bed already, 7 to 10 prints is already kind of jacked up.
It gets kind of marred up. That's from trial and error moments, failed prints. You think you have it leveled, and well, guess what? It didn't want to do that because there was other issues. When I first got this thing, I fought a lot of problems. And the print beds, they'll get beaten up. So buy a separate one. I'm going to be ordering one soon. Probably I'll order in the same bed probably. Just have a spare one of those, and then the PEI beds and stuff like that. But right now, that bed I have on there right now is sticking with the filament that I have. So, why fix something that's not broke at the moment? I'm running the PETG at 240 and 80. So, it might not work for everybody's. So, don't take that as Bible. Yeah. Believe me, I'm not.
Yeah, and that changes too with the material that your bed is. Like, you don't want to heat glass to that same thing. And, well, if you do heat glass to the same temperature, it's not going to respond the same way.
Yeah. Or in a mirror. Even if you use a mirror, it's not going to go the same temperature.
It won't. And honestly, even it gets down to the filament will either stick too much or stick not at all to it. So, I advise, the PEI spring steel. Yeah. And I think that's, I've had the best results with it. But again, we talked, Ed, you were, every problem is circumstantial, right? It depends on what situation you're in. So maybe a glass bed is your answer. You want a smooth finish instead of a textured finish. Yeah. But they also make smooth PEI spring steel beds. They make it to where one side's smooth, one side's textured. Yeah. So for me, I just bought 2 of those. I can flip them over. The biggest thing, the reason I bring it up is $20 a pop for one of them, and you honestly can flip them over. Like I've ruined both sides of every single print bed. I think I've gone through 10 of them in the 2 years. I've ruined both sides of them, but I still tell you what, I can still get a print to come out. The bottom I might have to sand because it's got a weird outline because I created some channels or crevices, like some lines. But it is what it is. I think so. Nozzles, bed, those are the things that are the biggest consumable. Oh, filament, of course, which is what we've been talking about.
Yeah, which that's between anywhere from $15 all the way to $50, depending on what you're gonna get. If you're just gonna play around, you don't need something durable. Stick to PLA, If you go a little bit higher, go to other things. Play with it. Play with the colors if you want. You know,
Yeah.
it's like Skittles Taste the Rainbow.
I suggest if you're switching from PLA to PETG though, that we were consumables, alcohol, because PLA printing on your bed it's kind of
it's an acid.
You'll see like an oil or a film on there. We won't really see it. It's kind of invisible. You need to wipe that off, and the alcohol will break that up, so you can kind of wipe it off.
Remember, PLA in its natural form is an acid.
Yeah.
So it's leaving an acid residue behind. So that's first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's see, what's the next thing? Next, alcohol. If you're gonna do that isopropyl alcohol, which is like $7-8 in the store, depending on what size you get. A lot cheaper. You can go to the just don't buy the antiseptic stuff.
Yeah.
But you can get this. You can go to the nearest grocery store and get it for $4.
You can get 3 bottles of it on Amazon for $30.
There you go.
99% pure.
Yeah, exactly.
You buy it by the gallon. Then you got the others, your rags and stuff like that. It's then I don't know if John wants to touch on the barrier, the cost of his new printer he just picked up.
Oh yeah.
And that before we kind of close out for the day. So if you want to touch on that,
oh man, yeah,
you're more than welcome to.
So, yeah, I got a resin printer. I went with a fundamentally different chemical process, just because I've been kind of looking at it, and I think it's cool. I watched a couple prints go through, a couple models, and then compared it to the best print that I've ever had on my printer, as well as a few other prints off of FDM printers, and dear God, is it, you don't get rid of layer lines, but they are so much easier to hide. It's not part of like every layer. If you have layer lines, then you may have had a problem with your slicing. Man, so I'm still doing kind of I'm the guinea pig with the resin printer and doing a lot of research, but much like your standard printer, your slicers are going to be open source. They're free. I've seen a lot of, you can purchase a pro plan to help you out a little bit more, tell you what your problems are, or teach you some things. But core cost, like with the resin printer, you have to think safety. That was something I hadn't considered at first. So I'm thinking just the printer. So if you're at just the printer itself was $200. So that's actually not bad.
No.
But you think about, you have to take a step back and look at your overall process that it has to take. So for a resin printer, there's many more steps in the post-processing. So I'll slice it, I'll put it on the printer, I'll hit play, and let it do its thing. But once that's done, I need to then do more steps to that in order for it not to be toxic. Because the resin, those fumes, you shouldn't be inhaling. You should be wearing gloves. You need a respirator. You need some type of air purification if it's a closed room or something like that. You can't just be in there the whole time. But then those are the things you have to consider for safety to be able to get to a good print. But you need to wash it, and by wash it, I'm not saying dish soap in the sink. No, you need that 99% isopropyl alcohol, and it needs to be in a bath, and that bath it needs to kind of get stirred around the print, if that makes sense. So what I got the Anycubic Photon Mono 4K. That's my printer. But then it came with didn't come with it, but there's a package deal with the wash and cure, because the wash is actually in a bin that I can stick on the top. It's got a magnet on the bottom with a blade, and it'll circulate that alcohol for me, and it actually has a mount that fits my bed, so it's perfect. That was about $100 for that, so total package for both was about $300. And then I had to spend a little bit more to get alcohol. I had to spend a little bit more to get a filter to put unused resin back in, so I'm not just wasting.
And then what's your price point on the resin?
On the resin?
Yeah.
That was about $24 for 1 kilogram of resin. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've ran about 3-4 prints, a couple failures, but they did most of the work, or most of the print. And I barely used any resin at all. So I'm thinking it's along the same feeling as the consumable, like the filament rolls that you would consume. But yeah, that last step in the process is the curing. It needs to cure with a certain UV wavelength, and the beauty of it is that station does that as well. So for other stations, what other people have done is they set 2 separate stations up after that. That's more money. So then I just decided, hey, you do 2 in 1. You solve both my problems. You condense my space. $300. I can treat my resin prints and get things going. So of course, put a little bit more to get those air purifiers and things like that. Just because I was a little bit hesitant, but I don't think cost is the barrier to entry for resin. I think the barrier, because most of these printers are much smaller. I think I got one that's like, even though it felt small, on the bigger side of things. So you can get a small scale resin printer for $100. You get a wash and cure station for probably less than that if it's smaller. So less than $200, you can get printed in resin printing or started in resin printing, but you're only going to be printing small models.
Yeah.
So I think that is a nice step in, but it's also a bit riskier because of the toxins.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what an MSDS sheet is, you need to go look it up, because anytime even with the filaments that we're putting in, standard FDM, they should have a material safety, because they kind of let a little bit off too, but not as bad.
You can find those. Any chemical company has to have those on site.
Yeah.
You can also find them online through the federal government. The federal government has to have those on site. Have to have those available to you. If you can't find them, find your local FEMA office, and ask them for it through the or if you're in another country, whatever your local disaster response location is. Talk to them. They will have your MSDS sheets. You can also find them online. There's a lot of places where you can go find them. I can't name off all of the websites because I don't know them off the top of my head, but if you look up MSDS in your own home country, you're bound and determined to find them.
Probably
we got
Poison
people
Control.
Poison Control would have MSDS sheets as well.
Yeah, they got to retreat you.
It's if you have Poison Control, whatever country you're in.
Oh, that's true.
It's which you probably will. Your local health departments, we'll say, go to them. They should be able to help you out. So, with that, I think that brings us, to an end, for this week. And it's, we start talking about all that, we want to say, first and foremost, thank you. We're actually recording it in the new, podcast area, so hopefully it sounds a little better than it did before. Yeah, you could call it a studio.
No, I'm calling it a studio.
So, we got that now. So we're moving on up. Literally right upstairs. So we're going vertical. But with that, I want to say thank you. I've been looking at the stats, seeing where everybody's coming from. So I want to thank everybody from across the globe. That's tuning in, listening to us ramble. For me, we'll see y'all later. Share this with your friends, get them involved in us. We'd love to have more of them in there. And, we'll turn it over to the guys and, tune in and, give us a listen.
As always, we appreciate everybody listening, and we'll continue to bring content.
Yeah. I also, echo these guys. I thank everybody. This is, of course, like Nick said in the beginning, it's a journey. It's a journey for all of us, actually. We're all kind of taking a different step at a different place in this journey, and kind of trying to, teach everyone along the way. So, if you find yourself at any point in this process as well, as you want to get started, you find yourself with a barrier to entry, just talk to us, because we can find a way to get you started. We can find a way to get you pointed in the right direction. So just reach out.
If you need help in your local countries, we can definitely find somebody that can help you. Take a look at the blog and at blog.vulcanara.com. And check us out there. So hopefully we'll see y'all later, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the Tech at Lunch podcast, where we hope you learned something about tech during your break or during your lunchtime. If you did, please give us a follow to prevent missing future episodes. If you have any ideas or something you want to hear or learn about, please send us a show idea to podcast@vulcanara.com. Hope you have a good rest of the day and continue learning.